Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Blue podcast. Today we're bringing you a Euros edition. We're going to get straight into it, and with me today we've got Neil.
Hello.
And we've got Addy.
Well there.
So what we'll do is we get started with I suppose the big one out the way first, the winner of the tournament. Who do you guys think has got the best chance to actually win the tournament this year, and why? Neil, what do you think? I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, everyone said it, and this is a boring pick, but you have to go with France because you look at theirs. I know people have said this a lot, but if you take a squad of players who didn't make it to their actual squad, they'd get easily into the knockouts as well. They just have an incredible selection of talents in almost every position you look. It's so hard to pick a weakness. You'd maybe say left back, but that's about it really. So yeah, it's not the most exciting pick, but I have to go with France.
No, I agree with you. They've got such depth, and a weakness being Digne at left back is really saying something.
Hernandez.
I mean, from goalkeeper all the way to forward, they've got everything you could hope for.
Yeah,
Addy, what do you think?
I do agree with Neil. France is also a big contender, but I'm also split between England. It's sort of shaky there because both teams have amazing players and a great squad overall. Like Neil said, left back is one of the weaknesses in France, and I do think as well the defenders and the left back is an overly stacked position in England as well. England is a bit shaky. I don't know how that will work in their formation wise for them, but I do think France and England are definitely top contenders for that.
I think we should also mention Portugal because they have a brilliant score as well. For me, that they're going to in my prediction they're going to make the final alongside France, and also a couple others which I think people are, I don't know, sleeping on a bit. Italy, they have quite a good squad, and more importantly, they have a very established squad because with them, you know which their key players are, and you know who's going to start for them. Whereas for England, for example, you have no idea who's going to play the first game. So I'd argue that Mancini at Italy is probably the most tactically astute manager in at least the top teams. And well, I know tactics are not so important in international football because they don't have time and you can't, get everything drilled in and everything. But it certainly helps to have a smart manager in that sense to, mix things up if it's not working or whatever. So Italy and Spain as well. I think after their, COVID issues, their preparation has been derailed. So maybe not so much now, but I thought they had a great squad too. The only thing they're really lacking is a striker. I don't know how Gerard Moreno will. I hope he does well because Morata in the friendly, it was a bit of a nightmare for him.
I really liked Netherlands as well. They had a good squad. Very like you said, established squad. Germany also a top contender, especially with their entire setup that they've got. I think the weird thing is the site that I'm looking at lists their squad. They only have two forwards, Werner and Kevin Volland.
Yeah,
I don't know
but
if that's true.
but then
Yeah,
with them, they've
only
also got the likes of Havertz who
yeah,
might,
yeah,
so the classification on the squad can be debated, but
yeah,
yeah,
debated, yes.
it's but the Netherlands, though, thing with them is obviously they had the change in manager with Frank de Boer coming in now,
Yeah.
and that's not really been good as it. I mean,
Yeah.
he's trying really
whole
hard to play the
chemistry.
5-3-2, and
Yeah.
he's I think he said in a press conference too that he will stick to it, and they've not really looked too good.
Yeah. I think that it's a whole chemistry change, especially the formation. I was doing my own research. They did really well using a 4-3-3 or a 3-4-3. Yeah. But this current squad looks like it'll do just fine because they don't have too many. They have good center backs and fullbacks, It's just that you can't base your entire game on defensive because the Netherlands historically they do very well on the attacking portion and in the final third. That's where they gold win games. That's the entire point.
Some great points there, really. I mean, that sort of helps me segue right into the next bit, which, we've talked about a lot of teams who, could potentially be there. In terms of the dark horse, who would you guys, put there? Dark horse to win the tournament. Who's your top pick going into this tournament for that?
I'll go with Denmark, because I think they have a very good, not a great squad, but if you take their first 11, I think it's a fair lineup. They've got the likes of Schmeichel in goal, they've got Højbjerg in midfield, and they've got quite a few good options in attack. And I'll touch up on a few when we get to our players, and also a couple of others. There's Turkey, who've looked good recently in the World Cup qualifiers, and they've also got exciting players, and of course Yilmaz up front, who's doing great. And I think one interesting thing in this competition will be how fresh and how fit the players are, because obviously they've come on the back of a, well, congested, to say the least, season. So I saw a chart somewhere where Turkey, basically they have the youngest squad in the tournament based on average age, and I think they're in the bottom 5 in terms of the average minutes played per player. So they have a young squad and a fresh squad as well. So I think that might help them, upset a couple of teams with fresher players at their disposal.
It's a good point. Addy, what do you think? Who's your dark horse?
I have Italy. They are a big club, but everybody's been sleeping on them, especially pundits and everyone. I do agree with Turkey. They do have a very, very good squad. The defenders wise, Çelik, Demiral, Kabak, Soyuncu, and Rıdvan Yilmaz. I think that'll be used to their advantage. And forwards wise, they do have Unal and
Under as well.
Yeah,
Cengiz Under.
I do have Italy as the dark horse because they have a great team overall. The only problem I think they will face is in their forwards. I think their only really established forwards right now are Immobile and Insigne. Other than that,
Chiesa is good as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's listed as a midfielder, but yes, Chiesa is also. And Jorginho as well. Verratti. And defense-wise, they're also very, very stacked.
Yeah, they've got some great talent, and I mean, especially with someone like Italy. I mean, it was only a few tournaments ago that they failed to get past the group stages. Now, to see where they are now, they could definitely, bring something up. That they almost look like a completely different team. So yeah, I'm with you on Italy, and I'd love to see a team like Turkey go really far and maybe pull off a Greece and surprise a few people. I suppose the next thing to look at, is the next sort of in this tournament. Who are you looking at that could be sort of like a surprise star, or have their breakout of the tournament as a player? Who's the first player that comes to mind when you think of that?
I'll throw in a name you probably might not have heard. Jonas Wind from Denmark. He first came up on my radar last year towards the end of the Europa League campaign when FC Copenhagen, they got to the knockouts and they did quite well. And he has a terrific season this time. 28 games in the Superliga in Denmark, 15 goals and 8 assists. That's a really good return for a forward. And yeah, I do think he could score a few goals and take Denmark out of the groups and maybe even a bit far into the knockouts.
Addy, who's the first name that comes to your mind when you think of it?
I'd say Yilmaz or Unal from Turkey, the forward. They are very, very good, and they've had an amazing so far season in the friendlies before the Euros. That's too early to say anything, especially considering they're just friendlies. But they are doing very, very well. Other mentions would be Foden and Mount. They've had stellar seasons, and both players being on England would make them a formidable threat.
Yeah, I mean, some interesting names. I was quite looking forward to seeing what Jude Bellingham could do for England as well, because with a lot of these leagues, especially the Bundesliga. I don't get to watch it week in and week out. And especially in some of the other leagues, sort of, for example, like the Dutch league or whatever, there's a lot of players there who can really put their name out. And especially with all these clubs looking at, taking a lot of fresh talent in, a lot of clubs hurt financially. It's a great opportunity. And I mean, we've seen what's happened before with players like, Felix, who have really shown what they can do on an international level. And they go from unheard of to the next star, really, that you see everyone's linked with transfer-wise. So I suppose what we should look at next then is probably the Golden Boot. Throughout the tournament, who do you think is going to earn the Golden Boot from this tournament?
For me, we should have mentioned Belgium when we were taking a look at the teams. So for me, I think Lukaku is a good pick for the Golden Boot, because this is, I'd say, one of Belgium's last chances. Certainly in the Euros, because they have a aging squad. I think their average age is quite close to 30. Oh yeah, they have the oldest squad in the tournament on average age. So yeah, well, if they are going to win an international trophy, it's probably either this or an even tougher one in the World Cup. So I expect them to do quite well as well. And Lukaku obviously has been in the form of his life at Inter, and yeah, I think he can translate it into goals here too.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Lukaku could really be in there for a shout, and I agree absolutely on Belgium and their age. I think they've been a dark horse for quite a few tournaments now, but I think this one they've really got to sort of acknowledge that players aren't getting any younger. Hazard, De Bruyne, so yeah, it's really time for them to focus and knuckle down. Addy, who do you think could be in there with a shout of the Golden Boot?
I personally think it would be Harry Kane. He is a consistent striker, day in, day out. He puts in the work. The Premier League Golden Boot he just recently won, and I personally think he's gonna carry that hot form into this Euros 2021 tournament. I don't think I don't have a second one option. To be honest, I don't think anyone else. It would be Harry Kane.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think with England, when I look at the lineup, I don't think England really know who their best 11 really are.
Yeah.
You see like 4 right backs are being selected, the centre backs are being changed. No one knows who the goalkeeper is. But, one thing everyone seems to be set on is, Harry Kane in that role. No one's really challenging him anytime soon. So I think he's definitely in there with a shout, where a couple other players, you don't know just how much game time they're going to get, especially for England. I suppose the next thing to look at then, I guess, is what do you think the biggest surprise of the tournament's going to be, whether it's a club or a certain player? For me, it's probably going to be that James Ward-Prowse didn't even get into the England squad. I think he really should have been a shoo-in, and I was really disappointed not to see him actually make the cut.
Yeah, I mean, even after Trent Alexander-Arnold pulled out, there was another chance for Southgate to take him in. But I think at least with the Ben White decision, you can justify it by saying that he's versatile, so he can play in the defensive midfielder role, or he can play in centre back. And England, if they are going to play a back three, I think they're a bit thin at centre back without him. Don't have too many options, so I can see why that was done. But yeah, for me, the big surprise, and it's not very positive, and I don't think most of our listeners, who I presume will be English, will like it, but I think England will not do well at all. Because as you said, for once, I think there's quite high hopes, and usually with England going into an international tournament, not everyone is saying they'll have a proper chance at winning or anything, but this time there's serious conversation about them, making the finals, possibly even winning it. And I just don't think that's going to happen, because as you said, we have no idea what their best lineup is. We don't even know if they're going to go with a back three or a back four. We just have no idea what we're going to see on the first match day. And more importantly, the point I made about players being tired. So England, their squad is quite young. I think it's the second youngest at the tournament. But in terms of average minutes played in leagues this season, their players have played the most. If you look at their players, so you have Kane. Obviously, he was integral to Tottenham. You could say he almost carried them a bit because he won the Golden Boot, got the most assists as well. Then you look at a few other attacking options. You Foden, who was integral to City, obviously. You've got Grealish, who was, well, again, a key player for Villa. You've got Rashford, who might even be carrying an injury. We don't know what's going on there, but from what I've seen recently, he's been in and out at United and everything. And yeah, just wherever you go, then obviously Ward-Prowse, I think he had the record. He's obviously not made the squad, but he had a record of playing every single minute in the last 2 seasons. So there's tired players everywhere you look, and to add to that with the uncertainty of the lineup and possible chop. I mean, it's good to chop and change to a certain extent, but when you've no idea who your best lineup is, I don't think you can get to the finals or win a major tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very controversial take on it, but I
Yeah.
agree with everything that you've said, because we still going into a major tournament, and Southgate's not exactly new to the job. We still don't really know who England's best 11 is. Addy, what do you think? What do you think is going to be the biggest surprise of the tournament?
I think Turkey will surprise everyone. They've
Yeah.
had a stellar, very, very good season, and you wouldn't normally say that in any other. If you went to the past, you wouldn't say, "Oh, I think Turkey would be a potential threat this year." But this year they've shown out very, very well. But as a player, if I were to choose a surprise player, I would choose Mount. He's had a very, very unexpected turn of events this year, and he's had a very, very good season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when Lampard was at the club, there was a lot of controversy around him.
Yeah.
Some people were for him, some people weren't. And then watching him under Tuchel, I've been like, every time he's played, I thought, wow, the work rate of this guy. And now he's being compared with Foden as one of the best young talents that England has right now, which is praised at the highest level as far as I'm concerned. So obviously we talked about some of the biggest surprises there. In terms of, players, who do you think is going to be the biggest flop of the tournament when we look at it in the other side?
I would go first, Pogba. He is a selfish player. He just doesn't have the attention in the dressing room and everything, as reports. I don't think it was a very, very good selection. He is a top class player, of course, but the way United plays him versus the way France plays him is very, very different. And United doesn't even almost play him as much as they used to, correct? If I was to say a biggest flop for overall country, I would say Germany. They are a great country. They have a very stacked, and a very great overall lineup. It's just that the change between managers, just a very sudden change before the Euros, it's gonna hurt. I believe it's gonna hurt them. Joachim Low, he had a great system going on, and he was a very, very good manager. But now Hansi Flick is taking over, correct?
No, he's taking over after the Euros.
After, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
so this is like
I was reading.
But they'll still have that looming over them, of course.
Because
Yeah,
he's
the
leaving,
looming.
right? So it's got to affect them psychologically to some extent.
And then Germany, the whole squad is just out of place. They did have some problems with injuries, I think, before, and the tournament is gonna. I think they're gonna come in third place in the group of death. Still, I think they might proceed, but it's still a very, very light situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you on the whole, Pogba sentiment as well, because there's always been that sort of talk where, Pogba doesn't put his best effort forward, or he doesn't want to run with United, but he's happy to do it all for France.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of controversy there as, why does he put more effort in with France and, not do it with United? But I agree, if he's been playing that way, underperforming for United, I can really see that transferring over to France now. And, admittedly, he has lifted a major title with France before. But again, that might catch up to him here. Neil, who do you think biggest flop of the tournament? Who comes to your mind?
Yeah, it's a tough one when we look at the players, but for me, I just think Cristiano Ronaldo won't have the best tournament or something that most fans would expect, because you look at Portugal right now, they're stacked all over their attack. They've got so many options, and the thing was, so Ronaldo's mostly been used as a striker lately, right? So I just don't see him having the same impact on the games. And then when he's got players like Fernandez and Silva and Jota and all of those players around him, it's it's going to be hard for him to have the spotlight as he usually does. So I'm not necessarily saying he'll be bad, but he just won't be as much of a star player
Yeah.
as he usually is because he's got all of that talent
Mm.
around him. So yeah, I think he will be a relative disappointment, but obviously he could still do well. But from what people would expect of him, I don't think he'll operate at that level.
Yeah, I can see, especially if there's like two forward players, so like he's playing alongside
Yeah,
Jimenez, and they're
Silva.
both target men. It's going to be more for him, which is probably not what he's used to, and probably not what he prefers either. So yeah, I could see something happening like that. But that Portugal side, they've got so much talent; it's bordering on ridiculous.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I didn't even mention like Andre Silva or Joao Felix, who are just
Yeah,
amazing, but they don't even have a spot in the starting lineup. It's
yeah,
madness.
absolutely. And yeah, it brings me on to my final point. Player of the tournament. You know, who have you both got? For me, it's probably going to. I think Kante is probably going to be player of the tournament just with the form that he's brought over, and I think he brings something different to anyone else. You know, Addy, I'll start with you this time. Who do you think could be the player of the tournament in your eyes?
I said that the Golden Boot would be Kane, and if that happens, which probably will, I'd also have him as the player of the tournament.
Okay.
He, like I said, he's very, very consistent, and I think no one else on the England squad, like you said, nobody. He's the only certain player. Nobody can challenge him as of right now, and that's why I have him as the player of the tournament.
Yeah, I can see that. You know, Neil, what about you?
I
Who
have
comes
to
into your
agree with
mind?
you. I have to agree with you in Conte because yeah, obviously he's absolutely amazing right now with the form he's in, and I think his dynamics with Pogba are the reason why Pogba is good at France because well you can say that he works harder for France or whatever, but if you look at Pogba at France, he's always working with Conte in the midfield. So while Pogba can go forward and do his attacking work and everything, and maybe be a bit lazy, but Conte back there, he will clean everything up for him.
Yeah.
Pogba's defensive weaknesses can be, slightly covered or made up for by Conte's work rate. So I think he's going to, and obviously France have a great squad and they're probably going to go far. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
probably going to be player
I
of the
mean,
tournament.
it really says something about France, where we've got them down as potential winners. We've also got them down as maybe having the biggest flop in Pogba, and also having the player of the tournament in Kante, all in the same squad. I mean, it really just says how much of a ridiculous squad they are.
Yeah, but if there's one thing which recently came up, so obviously Deschamps has squashed the beef with whatever he had with Benzema and Giroud and whatever.
Yeah.
But yesterday I read something which basically said that after the friendly over Lithuania, was it? So Giroud was unhappy that certain players were not passing to him.
Yeah.
And then Mbappe, I think he wanted to do a press conference as well to address this. And then obviously he had to be calmed down and everything. But I wonder what's going on in that dressing room because I don't think that's the best. I mean, obviously they have the best squad by far, and they could win on talent alone. But I think if France are to flop or to fail, then they will be their own undoing with whatever is going on in there,
Yeah.
or a really bad performance. So I think the environment within the French dressing room it'll be quite interesting to monitor, and I think that could be an issue for them. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point I hadn't really considered. I mean, Addy, what do you think about that? Because although they've got so much talent, Neil's raised a good point. With that talent comes a lot of personality and a lot of ego, and a lot of players aren't going to take too well to that. And before a major tournament, it could spell disaster. What do you think?
Well, I personally think that if this whole thing, it's about a team, correct? The Euros is about the best team there. And France by far do have the best squad by talent, but if they can't keep that up by backing it up with the unselfish play, most of their players, other than Conte and some defenders and midfielders, they have mostly players on teams that are selfish players or the stars, right? That wouldn't really work well in a international tournament because you're with the best of the best in your country. And people are always going to compare you to someone else, correct? And if you can't deal with that, then you definitely are going to crash and burn at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's the last question I already had, guys. Has anyone got anything else they want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to touch up a bit on Ukraine as well, because I think they've got a half decent squad too. And we didn't mention them in our dark horses or whatever, but they've got a decent squad. Looking at their stats again, they have a fairly young squad, and I think they're third, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of they're fourth in terms of the average minutes played in their league with their players. So they've got freshness. They've got a good squad, and yeah, I think they could do well as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, carry on, Addy.
I just wanted to ask, who do we think would win in every group? Because there are certain groups where the teams are very stacked, like Group F, the group of death. Which teams would pass through if you had the matchup?
I mean, the thing with the expanded tournament is, third spot can get you through in 4 out of the 6 groups.
Yeah.
So obviously that's based on the points and everything. So that's why I think the group of death is not as much, daunting as it would have been if it was just the top 2, because if you think about it, if we look at that group alone, I don't see one team winning all of their matches. That would be even because even if you have France, they'll have Portugal one time, and that is not going to be easy because they're arguably 2 of the best squads out there. So because of that, I can't see one team winning all of their matches, which means that there'll be a greater points distribution, and because of that, there is a high possibility that the third place team will outperform at least a couple of others in the remaining groups and go through. But for me, the deciding factor in that group will be one country dropping points against Hungary, because I think Hungary will not be, pushovers. Certainly, they will cause problems, and if someone does drop points against them, they could be in a bit of trouble. And I mean, obviously, you go through in third place, but then you don't get a favorable draw at all. So if you go through in third place, you'll have to face some big sides in the round of 16 already. So that will be a.
I just have to bring up the point. Group F does have it. Like they're arguably three of the best teams in the group in the world in the same group. But that also does raise the point that one squad will be losing, like in that third place, and that means they won't get a lot of points because they're against the other top 2 biggest teams. So that means it would technically be good luck for the other team because they would have to have more points than the third place team in Group F, which means they would just have to win against worse teams. Like if you take Group C, for example, which is Austria, Netherlands, North Macedonia, and Ukraine, that is a very, very, I would say not so great. Like they're not the best teams in the entire tournament, but those teams would have a higher chance of moving on to the third place team would have the higher chance of moving on than a team in Group F because they would have to win. They would have a higher chance of winning.
Yeah, that's a very good point you make. I think Group C, as you said, and Group E is Group E. I think there'll be more intrigue outside the pitch than on the pitch because I think it's Poland, Slovakia, Spain, and Sweden. So again, you'd have to say that all of these teams, apart from Spain, maybe are fairly equally matched. Maybe not so much Slovakia, but I think in this group again, the third place team should have an easy chance of progressing. So yeah, that's a good point. It'll be interesting to see the group dynamics with the third place qualifying and how that works. So yeah, I agree.
Absolutely. But yeah, I'd say that's a wrap. And thanks for joining me today, Blues. If you're still here, thanks for listening. Take care, stay safe, and as always, City till I die.